Let's start out with how the drywall is delivered. It's always delivered in packs of 2. So I know this is obvious to anybody who's ever hung drywall, but the point I want to make is you can cut drywall from either side. So the first piece you're going to be measuring and cutting is going to have the paper face backside facing you. You don't need to flip it over, so you're only working off the good face. You just don't need to. If you're cutting with a saw, you may want to, but that's a whole other story. I thought I would start out by talking about T-squares. I have 2 T-squares with me. One is what I would call let's just call it a heavy-duty blade. It's a much better square. This is the type of T-square you're really going to want to be looking for if you're going to hang a lot of drywall. It's quite a thick piece of aluminum. I would say it's probably not 1/4 of an inch, but almost 1/4 of an inch thick. This allows you to do a better job cutting drywall. The other square I have here is not a heavy duty. It's probably only 1/8 or less thick. So it's a little more difficult for me to do a nice straight cutting job with this. Now I'm gonna show you what I mean. Whenever you cut an end off a piece of drywall or do any cutting when you use the knife, you want to have a sharp knife. A dull knife, it just makes it very difficult. You're not going to get a nice straight cut. So you got your measurement, you put your mark on it, so that's the length of piece that I want. And then you just hold your T-square to that mark, and I always take the toe of my boot and I hold it on the bottom so it doesn't move, because we want a nice square cut. Now, this is where it becomes, this is where some people have problems that haven't cut before. As I pull the knife up, I'm keeping it square. I'm not tipping the knife this way. If I tip the knife that way, it could actually lift the edge of this T-square up and cause a crooked cut. So, and I'm not putting a lot of pressure on it. I'm simply just scoring through the paper. And that's all I have to do. One swipe up. A lot of people will go part ways up and then switch and go down so that way you don't cut your thumb. You notice I do keep my thumb away from this edge, so I'm able to just run the knife all the way through. Let me show you what I mean by tipping this knife. If I'm pulling it up, and as soon as I start twisting that knife, it tends to want to lift the edge of this T-square up. But because this is a thicker T-square, it's less likely to do that. So you're going to have less problems with the edge lifting up as you're cutting if you're using the thicker T-square. Let me show you what happens if I use the thinner one. As soon as I start cutting, you can already see, even though I'm keeping it pretty square, that is lifting the edge of the T-square up, and that's going to result in a little bit of a crooked cut. So if we're cutting this to be a pretty tight fit, and all of a sudden I've created a little bit of a bump in that edge because of the edge of the T-square lifting off, it's not going to fit as well. So the cheaper T-squares do not work as well. So anyways, I've got it scored. Now, I just lift the panel and then I just give it a quick snap. Because I'm actually cutting the backside first, I have to go around and cut through the face of this, through the little grooved edge here. So I get a really nice straight cut. If I were cutting from the other edge, I'll show you what I mean. I'm cutting from this edge, the good face I mean. I just simply score it lightly with a nice sharp knife. And then I don't have to go around the backside because I don't really care that much if I tear the paper or the backside. I can just stick the knife right through here and just cut it. And because the knife was so sharp, it actually didn't do any damage. But it's a little trick. If you're cutting from the good face, you don't have to go around the back side to score the back side of the paper. So that's just some basics on using a T-square. These are 48-inch high T-squares for 48-inch high drywall. If you have the 54-inch, you're going to need to buy a longer T-square.